When you hear first aid, what do you think about? Do you have the necessary skills that you need to protect or even save the life of yourself or a family member? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to have fun doing it. I'm Fanchen Stinger, and I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to this month's Farmington Hills Citizen Corps Council for Emergency Preparedness Cable Show. The name of our show today, Learning First Aid Skills. And this is definitely information that could save your life or the life of someone you know and love. The mission, of course, of the Citizens Corps Council is to support and enhance the efforts of local public safety organizations in helping to ensure that residents and business owners have the information, the education, and the skills that are necessary to protect yourselves, your families, your friends, your homes, and businesses in the event of a local emergency. With me today, we have a fun bunch of guys with us today. Steve Fain is an administrator, professional, and support services for Botsford Hospital. Steve, welcome very much. Also, he's a Chamber of Commerce board member. We also have Ken Massey, Farmington Hills City Council member, Citizen Corps Council member, and a clinical scientist specializing in heart and lung disease for Pfizer Corporation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And last but definitely not least, Farmington Hills Fire Department Inspector and Paramedic John Castron. John, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And thanks for bringing your toy today. Of course, it's not really a toy, but we're going to get to that in a few minutes. First of all, Steve, I want to start with you. As a representative of Botsford Hospital, what can you tell us about the plans that Botsford has in place for emergencies of various kinds?
Well, our staff, because they take care of patients 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, they're used to handling emergencies, small, large, that just come up just as during the care of their patients. But as a hospital, we train extensively on what to do if we were all of a sudden to receive a large number of patients. In the past, always it was on the assumption that there would be a large accident somewhere.
Exactly.
And what we would do in terms of triaging the patients, getting them diagnosed, getting them to surgery, getting them treated and cared for, while also making sure we take care of the patients we already have in the hospital. But the world has changed on us, so in addition to learning how to handle just normal traumas, we've had to branch out and learn how to handle nuclear and biological and chemical injuries. And it's quite interesting to see the nursing staff work on patients wearing spacesuits.
Oh, yeah.
And see how they can handle things. We've always kept a large amount of supplies on hand, drugs, as well as other supplies for handling those patients. But now, since the blackout of last year, we've had to take an additional amount of very valuable storage space and add water and food and blankets and fans and other pieces of equipment. So it's been quite a change for us. The other major change that we've had to go through is using the incident command system, which connects us much more closely with the municipalities, the county, the state. We've always operated independently, but now there's a great need for us to be able to call for resources from other places or for us to offer to help other places. So the county handles all that coordination.
It's interesting just sitting here and listening to you talk about a lot of the changes that have been put in place now since 9/11, of course, and since the climate in our nation has changed, since the blackout. And a lot of people think of emergency disasters, they think of those big things that happen. But it could be a power outage from a storm. It could be anything that causes an emergency situation. And just knowing that Botsford is prepared and you've done the training that you've done, I think that gives a sense of security to our community as well. And those are really some impressive changes. When you think about first aid skills, you think about emergency preparedness, it goes far beyond just knowing to call Botsford because Botsford is prepared. I mean, it really starts with us as residents. Is that not correct?
Right.
Okay.
And like the hospital, your home is always open and you have to be prepared to handle an emergency there until help can arrive. Just like we have to maintain supplies until we can get outside help, you would have to do that at home. Though medical equipment is costly and hard to get, but nothing could replace the equipment that you really carry with you at all times, which is the ability, the confidence that you could handle an emergency when it comes up.
Okay. Like you said, know-how and also self-confidence. With that, is it just as simple as calling 911? Because if we call 911, of course, we're going to get you, John. But it's more than that, is it not?
Actually, calling 911 initiates the emergency response system.
Okay.
You have a response by the police department, the fire department, and those are the keys that obviously citizens expect.
Okay.
But those precious minutes between the time that you've dialed 911 and the first emergency responder arrives at a person's home or at the site of the incident, those are precious moments.
Those, and I want to point this out because those could be life-saving moments. You know,
Absolutely.
and that's very, very critical, and that's where skills that we may have or that we may learn can come into play.
And that's very true. And the know-how and the self-confidence that one gains by taking a first aid class or a CPR class provide the residents with the ability to actually intervene in those first few moments. Everybody remembers a time or can relate a story when a bystander steps in and applies some skill in a situation that results in saving a life or at least minimizing the injury to another person. And those are some of the key goals, gaining that self-confidence that the Citizens Court Council for Emergency Preparedness is trying to foster. We're trying to raise the awareness of the citizens so that they go out, they seek this training, and it's not a large amount of training. It's a small block of time in which that small block of time you can acquire a skill that perhaps could save, as you said in your opening comments, the life of a friend, someone you may have never met, or somebody that's very close to you, a loved one, a child, a parent.
When you talk about that, it brings up, I did a story a few weeks ago. There was a mother with her young baby at the mall, and the baby started to choke. Well, the mom didn't know what to do, so she started screaming for help. There were 2 high school students who were at the mall just hanging out with friends. They immediately went into action. The one student called 911, and in those precious moments, as you talked about, the other student did CPR on that young baby and saved that baby's life. Now, when I hear stories like that, I always think about, what if those 2 young women had not been there? What if they did not have the skills necessary to go into infant CPR? And John, that's where you come in. What would be the most important skill? If you could teach someone the first most important skill, what would that be in terms of first aid?
Well, Fanchen, as firefighters, it's our hope that everyone knows what we call ABCs.
Okay.
And basically that stands for airway, breathing, and circulation.
Okay.
The simplest way to address it is, as you approach a person that's in need, you are unconsciously or subconsciously checking airway as you walk up. Is that person talking to you? Are they struggling to breathe?
Okay.
Is there an airway that's moving air? Do you hear unusual sounds as they talk to you? Or are they in fact not breathing, laying on the ground?
Now, I remember taking first aid and CPR, and I think vaguely I remember something about asking a question. Are you choking? Is that something you're supposed to ask the person? Can you breathe? I mean, they probably are panicking. They can't really.
Like I said, as you walk up, it's almost a subconscious check of the person. You'll know if somebody's struggling. You'll see their reaction. There is the universal choking sign. You know, typically a person that is choking on an item will tend to bring their hands up to their throat, and that would give you an idea of which kind of action to take.
Okay.
Again, if you can recognize that a person seems to be breathing or has an open airway, then that's part of your check and it's done.
Okay.
And then when we say B for breathing, you want to check the quality of breath that a person has and how often they're breathing. Are they rapidly breathing? Are they struggling to breathe? Are they inhaling a nice deep full breath, or do you notice that they're working hard to get very short breaths?
Okay.
And these are life-threatening emergencies. These are when the 911 system takes effect. When you notice somebody having trouble breathing, you don't have very many minutes to waste. So
How many minutes do you have, would you say? I know you hear
anywhere
4.
from 4 to 6 minutes
Okay.
that's the outs. Four is, once you get beyond the 4-minute mark, you're starting to talk about some brain damage if a person is not breathing.
Okay.
So once you recognize that a person has difficulty in breathing of any kind, again, the 911 system needs to be activated. And then finally, C, that the circulation is our last one. And basically, we want to make sure that the person has a pulse. Now, obviously, if they're sitting up talking and having some difficulty breathing, they have a pulse. If you encounter a subject that's on the floor, doesn't appear to be conscious, you check a pulse immediately. You want to check a carotid pulse by the neck or by the radial pulse or both.
Okay.
Then again, without a pulse, or you want to begin CPR.
Okay.
And also check for major bleeds. That's another part of the circulation. You come across somebody and you notice a large amount of blood on the ground, then obviously we've got a situation where we need to get some immediate attention.
I have a question. I was actually at the Farmington Hills Y working out one day, and a gentleman had a heart attack. So he fell to the ground, and I'm trying to remember, I couldn't really tell if he was breathing or not, but there were people who moved into action. 911 was called. Then there was a liquid that started to come out of his mouth. And you hear about CPR and you move into action. Now, when you see that, isn't that a sign of something? At that point, do you do CPR or do you not? It would look like vomit, but I don't know if it was. I don't really understand how.
Well, it's very possible that it could have been vomit.
Okay.
CPR, what you're doing is you're breathing for the person and you're circulating
Steve's
the person's
laughing at me.
blood.
could
Well, that's
just
a
see the
question, because if you see that, then you don't know what to do, because your first reaction is, well, what?
Well, if a person vomits, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are breathing.
Okay.
So what we want to do is we want to breathe for them and we want to circulate their blood.
Okay.
So again, to check breathing on an unconscious subject, this is where we recommend you place your ear
Okay.
on the subject's mouth
Okay.
and look down towards the chest. So that
Oh.
not only could you feel the breath with your face or ear being next to that or
Okay.
hear it, you can also try to notice if you see the chest rising and falling, if in fact they are taking a breath.
Because I was just wondering, because what had happened in that situation is because of what happened to him, and because of I think the vomit or whatever, they chose at that point not to do CPR. So there are instances where, and if you call 911, obviously the operator will give you guidance and tell you what or what not to do. So
Right.
I have a question for you, Steve, from Botsford Hospital. Because you're so prepared, and obviously people in our community now know that Botsford Hospital is a hospital that's taken such care in being prepared, can we, in the case of an emergency, request that we're sent to that hospital or taken to that hospital? Is that something that we can do as citizens?
Well,
Or should we do even?
do you mean by ambulance or?
Yes, by ambulance.
Well, this probably the ambulance people probably would be able to answer that question
Okay,
better.
but should we? I mean, just knowing how prepared you are, is there a case where a patient or a family member can say, I want this person to be taken to Botsford
It
Hospital?
really depends also what's wrong.
The severity of the
if it's
problem.
if it's
Okay.
critical, you go to the closest hospital. That's just the rule.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter what your request would be. The ambulance would take you
Okay.
to the closest hospital that they can.
Well, I
go
hear
to.
that come up a lot. That question comes up because you'll hear people say, well, I don't want to be taken anywhere else but this, and that obviously maybe not be an appropriate thing to ask in that.
Patients do have the right to request the facility of their choice.
Okay.
And that is honored when it's possible to honor it. But as has been pointed out, there are a number of circumstances where a specialty clinic, due to the type of injury,
Okay.
may be required, or in the cases of true life-threatening emergencies, the closest facility is where the patient needs to be taken.
Okay.
And they can always, once they're stabilized, be transferred to another facility.
But we hope they all do ask to go to Botsford.
Yes, of course, we hope they do too. Well, a lot of health clubs now, a lot of schools, airports are installing defibrillators. And you have a defibrillator with you today. Now, I called it a toy earlier. We want to make it clear this is not a toy. This is actually a life-saving device. And it's important to know how to use it. And one thing I think that's great is that these defibrillators come with instructions. So if you haven't used one and you have to use one in an emergency situation, you still can do that. Can you kind of demonstrate for us how this works, what its purpose is, and how easy it is to use?
Certainly. This is our model that most of the police vehicles in our city carry. It's an, we can do that. It's an automatic external defibrillator.
This is great because most people probably have not seen one this close before.
Now, and what this is basically this is a machine that will monitor the rhythm of the heart of the subject that has fallen, possible heart attack. You simply place this plug into the slot, and then we turn the machine on. The machine will talk and give us instruction.
Analyzing heart rhythm.
These pads will be placed on the patient, and they come with directions on where they're placed on the subject. Once the pads are placed on,
Shock advised.
it will analyze the
Charging.
rhythm, determines
Stay
that this
clear of
patient
patient.
needs a shock, it charges the
Deliver shock now.
and
Press
it
the
tells
orange
you
button
directly,
now.
deliver a shock. A button is
Shock
pressed,
delivered.
the shock is delivered.
Analyzing
It will
heart
tell
rate.
you and remind you, you must be clear of the
Do not
patient
touch
because,
the
of
patient.
course, there could be a little bit of harm to the rescuer if they're in contact with the patient because there is an electric shock.
Shock advised.
Now, can you use this on a child?
Charging.
This particular one
Stay
cannot be.
clear
They are
of
in the
patient.
process of making them that deliver less
Deliver shock now.
Okay.
Press the
electricity.
orange
Okay.
button now.
Again, this is
Shock delivery.
analyzing again the rhythm of the
Analyzing
heart.
rhythm.
After the shock, it
Do
again
not
goes
touch
through its
the
process, tells you
Okay.
not to touch the patient so it can analyze the heart rate or in rhythm.
Shock advised.
And again, it's telling me that I need to do a
Charging.
shock. It's going to go through its
Stay
system,
clear
through its
of
checks, it goes
patient.
through the charge, and then it
Deliver
automatically
shock now.
is
Press
prepared
the
again.
orange button. Shock
We
delivered.
press it one more time.
Okay. Now, John,
It is safe
in what
to touch
instance
the
would you need to use a defibrillator? Like, how would you be able to make that assessment?
Again, if you find a subject that happens to be, these are best suited for what we call a witnessed arrest, a
Okay.
witnessed cardiac arrest. If you see somebody drop to the ground, but this isn't, necessarily have to be witnessed, but if subject is on the ground, you approach that subject, you do your ABCs, you determine that the patient's not breathing, and the person has no pulse. Immediately, you place this on
Okay.
with the subject.
Okay.
This will only let you deliver a shock if the subject is in a rhythm that
Okay.
allows you to be shocked.
Okay, so that
So
safety
you can't make a
mechanism is in
mistake.
there. Okay.
If you see a subject that's on the ground, perhaps breathing, perhaps, and you place these pads on anyway, which is fine to do, and it will analyze the rhythm of the heart rate, and if it's a rhythm that is not shockable, it will tell you not to shock the patient or
Okay.
that no shock is advised.
Okay.
And it'll even give you directions to check pulse and breathing.
That's great.
And it'll remind you to do CPR if in fact there is no pulse and there is no breathing.
Wow.
And it's
That's
it's a
very
great-
detailed.
It's a very good tool, and the benefits are well worth any cost that these machines might incur. Again, the 4-minute time frame.
Crucial.
We can't get, as a firefighter and a paramedic, we can't get to every single home, every single business, every area within 4 minutes just based on the location of our fire stations. And traffic and time of day
Right.
are all factors that change the time of response. Having these handy and in key areas, fitness facilities are very commonplace. It would be great to have them near high school football
Yes.
fields, places that commonly people in big groups are.
Okay. We know businesses are getting them more and more. Is there a way that people can get these for their homes if they have older or heart patients at home? Is that a possibility yet or no?
Yes.
Yes, actually, they are available for home use.
Okay.
The cost is not inconsequential.
Okay.
The cost of a unit like this is probably between $2,300 and $2,500.
Okay. And that's a pretty good investment. You're talking about a life. So it's not.
Many patients who might need one of these, though, if they're diagnosed ahead of time, would already have gone in and perhaps have a pacemaker or implantable cardiac pacemakers that are also defibrillators. The incidence that you may need one of these in your home, if people want one, the cost is starting to come down a little bit.
Okay.
But like you say, the peace of mind might be worth
Exactly.
the investment.
And Farmington Hills City Council has placed it in all the police and fire vehicles, so.
Yes, the fire department has had defibrillators and even more advanced defibrillators for the use
Okay.
of the paramedics for a number of years. But we've recently, within the last year, now all of the patrol cars also have them, and police officers are trained because often they're the first responder that arrives at the scene.
Well, this issue of first aid, Ken, I know is very dear to your heart. You have some personal experience with the importance of first aid. Can you kind of just share with us a little bit about why it's...
Well, certainly I became interested in first aid and responses and training when I was in the scouting organization.
Okay.
And shortly after graduating, I trained as a paramedic. I was a paramedic for 10 years. But I have, in fact, had several occasions where driving down the road, I've actually witnessed a gentleman collapse in his driveway, stopped and administered first aid. It was a CPR case,
Wow.
And that gentleman, I was very pleased to say that he did survive that particular incident.
That's
So
great.
you never know when the skill set may be used.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like to tell people is it's important to be trained up front. You may have one opportunity to use it, and getting trained after that opportunity is passed, you may never have that opportunity again.
Exactly. Point well said and well taken as well. And with that being said, Steve, I'm wondering, does Botsford Hospital offer first aid classes that people can take?
We do, and through our community EMS, they have a LSTI Institute, which is their training arm, and they do have courses in the AED and in infant resuscitation, advanced CPR, advanced life support, and those courses are a little high level, but they have agreed, have volunteered to work with us, to work with our CCC.
Citizens Corps Council
Yes.
for Emergency Preparedness Commission.
What he said, well, to work with us to help
Okay.
develop a more introductory first aid
Okay.
course, along with, I know we'll be using other agencies and other people who also train so that we can make it more extensively available through the
Okay.
community.
So should people call Botsford for more information if they want to do that? Or,
Yes.
okay, okay.
Well, community EMS, the
Okay.
LSTI, yes.
All right. And now what about the city? Does the city offer classes,
Yes,
seminars?
we do.
Okay.
Through the Caustic Center.
Okay.
And in the special services program that was published recently, there are some listings
Okay.
for available CPR classes as well as first aid classes. I might also mention that the American Red Cross and the American Heart Association offer classes in first aid and CPR as well.
Okay.
And the cost is very nominal. It's basically the charge for the book.
Wow.
So there are several venues in which people can be trained. The Council for Emergency Preparedness is also working on setting up a family training day. We're hoping that we can
Oh.
coordinate a community-wide CPR training day.
That would be
We would do that
great.
through the Caustic Center. And the plans for that are still in development, but we're hoping we can roll that out fairly soon.
Why not make it a family event? You know, everyone in the family should know
Absolutely.
first aid procedures.
And it's becoming more entrenched in our school system as well.
Yeah.
There have been a number of studies in which communities have as a requirement the CPR classes for high school students
Okay.
as part of the graduation requirements. In those communities where that's been ongoing, the rate of survival for heart attack patients is greatly enhanced.
Wow.
So that there's some real benefits. The same with the
Yeah.
AEDs, where we have in communities where they have broad-based AED programs, automatic external defibrillators. The survival numbers are
Yeah. That's
much
great.
higher than they are in general.
Education, being prepared, those two things are key. I want to return very quickly to Steve's opening comment, the importance of self-confidence and knowledge. Anything you guys briefly want to add to that you haven't had a chance to say that you think you want to still? Have we missed anything?
I just think that, as citizens, you can be trained and you can make a difference, and that's really what this is all about.
Okay.
And it is the mission for the Citizens Corps Council for Emergency Preparedness to raise that awareness, get people to understand the importance of being trained, not only in first aid and CPR, but in other emergency situations. Knowing what to do gives you the self-confidence that you can handle those precious few minutes before our ambulances and our firefighters have arrived at the scene.
Okay.
And those are important.
All right, good. Steve, any closing comments?
He used my line,
He
so.
took your line. Well, Steve, John, Ken, I want to thank all of you for being here and sharing your knowledge with us. And we want to remind you, first aid skills can be the skills that you possess that could save the life of your friends, your family, yourself, or someone you don't even know. So I like what you said, Ken, you may not want to wait to take it, because if you miss the opportunity to use those skills, it could cost someone their life. So make sure you get the skills that you need. Until next time, I'm Fanchen Stinger, urging you on behalf of the Farmington Hills Citizens Corps Council for Emergency Preparedness to make preparedness a priority every day in your life and the life of your family. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.